Good morning. Thank you for coming out to Dominican. And when Rob and Cynthia contacted me about this event, I was very impressed that this is such a relevant topic. And last month, I was reading the McKinsey Quarterly, and they put out a white paper on the implications of water supply and distribution. It's very interesting to me that there are, according to this report, every 20 seconds, a child dies somewhere on the planet because of lack of access to water. Women spend 200 million hours every day collecting water, and school children, 443 million school days are lost every year because children are sent out to collect water. So initially I thought, when Rob and Cynthia approached this topic, I thought, this is very much of a marine topic. Then looked at it, it's a regional topic, national topic, international topic. So they really have brought to our attention a very important topic for consideration. So I want to thank Rob, I want to thank Cynthia, of course. I want to thank all of you for coming out. And I know that we have a very distinguished panel today, and I, like you, are very eager to listen to their expertise. Thank you so much for coming.
I see also Carol Mills is here. I'm sorry, Carol, I missed you earlier. It's now my great pleasure to introduce the CEO of the Marin Economic Forum, Rob Eiler, who will moderate the next panel. Let's welcome Rob.
Thanks, everybody, for coming. What I want to do real quick, just to kind of tee up the day, is I kind of want to say why we're here. So when I thought about this, and as an economist, you're going to see a lot of this come out in the first panel, that I asked them to do basically supply and demand. And the rationale behind that is that's what it's all about in the end of the day. How we consume water and how we ultimately hope that we get water from the gods above. But the three things I thought about today that we really are looking at as objectives are the following. We want to update you on where we're at given the current water situation. One of the things that's funny is I think of the water market like the stock market, in the sense that when things are going down, everybody panics. And as soon as things kind of glide back up and we hear in the news that we're back at historic highs, we kind of have this myopic euphoria take place, and we forget that we used to not have as much wealth in the stock market. I kind of think that people have the same myopia about water. When it rains like crazy, we forget about January, where the only thing we were worried about is, God, are we actually done here? And then we got, 2 soaker months, and now we're into month 3 where we've seen some water come down, but we're still not out of the woods, as you'll probably hear in a minute. The second thing is understanding. One of the reasons why I did this as a small business thing is because small businesses in many ways are more exposed to water shortages than larger businesses, especially if your market is regional. I'll get back to this in a second. The third thing is to talk about what you can undertake, or doing things that are actually more cultural shifts. My take is that ultimately, to really get to real water conservation, businesses and residents have got to change the way we consume water. It's more cultural and has to happen in a sense at home and at business. And it's really the external, outside your residence, that's the key issue here, and undertaking a change, if you will, in culture. So that's why I say that's the you and the education piece, is that change is really the necessary item here. Real quick about small business again, 92% of the businesses in Marin County are 25 employees or less, and most of their markets are regional. So they face a very strange supply chain connection, sort of what I, as an economist, would call the elasticity of supply. The water issue for them is very steep, if you will, that they're very insensitive, especially if you're a major water user, you need that supply of water. And on the demand side, if you don't have large, broad international markets, if there are regional changes in the way that people consume, then the price of water changing at home may very well change the demand for products locally, as well as the demand for water. So those are the things I think about as an economist when this topic comes up, in terms of what is really happening, not just so much in the water market itself, but in people's reactions to changes in that market. So my second take is that we're going to hear some of this later too, is that small business is nimble and can actually do a lot of help. Landscape design, water capture devices, water efficiency products. Most of the folks you come out to have install new hot water heaters, new equipment in your homes, they're coming from small businesses to do that. So that's the kind of thing, again, that while small business is exposed, we may see small business here as a solution as well. So with that in mind, I'm going to moderate the first panel, which is really about the water situation. Krista Gabriel and Dan Carney are here from the 2 water utilities, or major water utilities in Marin County, and are going to tell us about the supply. Chris is going to talk to us about that, and then Dan's going to talk to us about demand.
Thanks very much, Dr. Eiler, for inviting me in the Marin Economic Forum. I always enjoy discussing water. It's a business I've been in for going on 23 years, and it's always interesting. You learn something new every day. What I intend to do today is to share information on the current water year with you all and the supply conditions for both North Marin Water District and Marin Municipal Water District, and provide some information on how we are responding to this extremely dry water year. I want to note that Dr. Eiler studied the economic impacts of water shortages in Sonoma and Marin counties, both in year 2007 and most recently in 2009. His studies included a suite of recommendations which have all been implemented in our respective districts. One was to continue or begin using tiered pricing. Another, consider water conservation efforts as permanent. A third, begin any and all incentive programs for water conservation. Fourth, use federal stimulus funding for new and improved infrastructure. Fifth, increase promotion and education about new technologies, such as how recycled water can be used. And finally, provide additional and more accessible information about water use to all end users in their billing to increase sensitivity to increasing rates. So I think if you visit either North Marin or Marin Municipal's website, you'll certainly see that we've accomplished all of those recommendations. First of all, I'd like to give you an idea of the water districts. I've shared slides from both North Marin and Marin Municipal to put this presentation together to give you some background. This is a map of Marin County. The green hatched area shows the North Marin Water District service area, principally Novato. North Marin also provides water service to the small communities in West Marin at the base of Tomales Bay. The Marin Municipal Service Area, although it's not shown on this map, includes the communities along the U.S. Highway 101 corridor in Central and South Marin. There are smaller water districts in Marin County as well, along the coast that serve Muir Beach, Stinson Beach, Bolinas, Inverness, and Dillon Beach, but I don't intend to talk about them today. So it's a drought, right? And this chart shows the calendar year rainfall recorded by Marin Municipal Water District at their Lake Lagunitas rain gauge. As you can see, 2013 was the lowest calendar year rainfall ever recorded, and there are significant differences in rainfall totals in different Marin County watersheds or microclimates. For instance, in Novato, in calendar year 2013, rainfall totaled less than 6 inches. So we didn't have Mount Tamalpais as the big block to storms where water is dumped as it comes in from the Pacific. However, rainfall in California occurs mainly in winter, and it spans from year to year. So you can't just look at calendar year rainfall. What you do is you look at water year or fiscal year rainfall. And this is a representation of that also at Lagunitas Lake. And you can see to date, just over 33 inches of rainfall has accumulated at that reservoir. That's only 64% of average historical rainfall in Marin County. Again, in Novato, much less rainfall has fallen, less than 13 inches, or 46% of average. By comparison, in 1976, Novato received less than 12 inches of rainfall, and in 1977, less than 11 inches. So we're right in that realm of the drought of record, 76, 77. And as a matter of fact, from my perspective, this is a 3-year drought. We've received less rainfall, not only this water year, but the prior 2 water years as well. This chart shows that the February 2014 rainfall was significant, and it really helped supply in Marin Municipal Water District reservoirs. To date, Marin Municipal reservoirs hold over 65,000 acre-feet, or about 82% of capacity. As you may or may not recall, in late January, early February, Marin Municipal made the call for conservation, requested customers to reduce demand by 25%. At that time, the the projection without any additional rainfall was pretty dire, that Marin reservoirs would fall to unprecedented low levels. In Novato, the local Stafford Lake Reservoir is much, much smaller and is only at 63% of capacity. If it were full, it would only hold 4,400 acre-feet, and it currently holds about 2,700 acre-feet. So where do we get our water? This slide shows the mix of Marin County water supply for both Marin Municipal on your left and for North Marin on the right. Marin Municipal annual use is about 27,000 acre-feet a year, with the majority coming from their local reservoirs on Mount Tamalpais. The remainder of Marin Municipal's water supply comes from the Russian River, about 22%, and a small amount of recycled water produced at the Las Colinas Valley treatment plant. For North Marin, annual use is about 10,000 acre-feet, or about 1/3 of Marin Municipal's, because we have about 1/3 of the customer base. And the supply ratio is just the opposite of Marin Municipal. About 75% of our water comes from the Russian River, and our local Stafford Lake supply makes up the majority of the remainder, with, again, about 2% recycled water. And we receive recycled water from both Novato Sanitary District and from Las Colinas Valley Sanitary District. All of Marin Municipal's water is delivered through the North Marin Aqueduct, which runs from Novato to Petaluma. Annually, the quantity of Russian River water to the two districts is about the same, but the ratio of the mix that it makes up for the two districts is just the opposite. The North Marin Aqueduct was constructed in 1961. Actually, North Marin and Petaluma paid to expand the Russian River water supply system at that time, paid for the Petaluma Aqueduct from Santa Rosa to Petaluma, and then North Marin built the North Marin Aqueduct. So we've been relying on that source for the better part of 50 years. North Marin is improving the aqueduct facility right now with Marin Municipal support. During your travels north on Highway 101 in the Novato Narrows, you may have observed large diameter pipelines being installed along the west side of US 101. The highway construction requires that the existing aqueduct be relocated, so we're taking the opportunity to make the pipeline larger so that we no longer have to pump water from Petaluma to Novato. It will flow by gravity, and it will meet the two districts' respective needs. By the way, we are also taking advantage of our good friends at Caltrans and MTC, who are helping fund the majority of that project because it has to be relocated. So as you can see, we're heavily reliant in Marin County on the Russian River, and this is a map of the Russian River system that shows the two main reservoirs. Lake Mendocino in the north near Ukiah. So Lake Mendocino near Ukiah not only receives local runoff, but Eel River water is diverted out of that watershed into Lake Mendocino through the PG&E Potter Valley Power Project. It's a small hydroelectric generating facility. And then the other large reservoir just northwest of Healdsburg on the map is Lake Sonoma. And my hat is off to all of those folks in Sonoma and North Marin who supported construction of Lake Sonoma back in the late 70s and early 1980s. It continues to benefit us greatly to this day. These graphs show the current status of the water storage in the Russian River. On the left is Lake Mendocino. On the right is Lake Sonoma. They look pretty similar, but pay attention to the scales. Lake Sonoma on the right is a much larger reservoir, currently holds about 186,000 acre-feet of water supply. On the left, Lake Mendocino holds less than 50,000 acre-feet of water supply at this date. Lake Mendocino is only 47% of capacity, and it's in especially tough shape. Mandatory water use restrictions are now in place for communities from Healdsburg north, which receive their water from Lake Mendocino. And Brian Weller, who's in the audience here, has provided us, at least up on the dais, I'm not sure if everyone got it, but a compendium of what's going on in Willits on how to conserve water. So a real good piece of information, especially for a real water short community this year. So interesting to note is that both reservoirs today are lower than they were at this time in 2009. And in 2009, Russian River water diversions to Marin were curtailed by 20%, pardon me, 25%. I'm going to come back to this in a little bit, but I wanted to point out that keeping water in Lake Mendocino is really important for our region because the Russian River holds threatened and endangered species that depend on release of that water in the fall of the year so that those fish can continue to survive and propagate. So the release of that water and keeping water in Lake Mendocino for later in the year is crucial for the continued economic vitality of our region. Because without protection of those fish, operation of the Russian River water supply system as we know it would be greatly diminished. The governor and both Marin Municipal and North Marin boards have declared water shortages and are requesting voluntary water reductions, 25% in Marin Municipal, 20% in Novato this year. We believe that this is reasonable and that the community can come together on a community-wide basis to achieve this level of conservation by eliminating water waste, fixing leaks, and reducing outdoor landscape irrigation. The voluntary restrictions do not apply to recycled water use. Marin Municipal has formed a drought resiliency task force and changed their reservoir operation recently to use stored water more effectively. The table on this slide identifies the drought resiliency task force plans. And at North Marin, we're not only enlarging the aqueduct to Sonoma County, but have expanded our recycled water system funded partly with federal stimulus money, and we've added water conservation programs to assist customers in saving water. Conserving water is the least cost increment of water supply, so we've put a big emphasis on that, as has Marin Municipal Water District. Additionally, since 2009, the communities serving Russian River water deliveries, which include Windsor, Santa Rosa, Rohnert Park, Cotati, Petaluma, Sonoma, Valley of the Moon Water District, North Marin Water District, and Marin Municipal Water District have formed the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership. That partnership is intended to save more water collectively than we could on an individual basis. And as I mentioned, in 2009, Russian River water was curtailed to Marin County. That's not happening this year, and the reason is that the State Water Resources Control Board, which has the authority to determine how water is used beneficially in California, is letting the partnership lead the way in responding to this very dry water year. So that at this time, we do not expect any mandatory requirements to be needed in Marin County this year. However, should Lake Sonoma fall below 100,000 acre-foot in storage volume, mandatory 30% reduction in Russian River deliveries would be required by the state board. We don't perceive that to be occurring this year, but we're trying to save water so that we can extend that supply as long as possible in future years. This last slide is my sign-off. There's a drought on, turn the water off. It's promotional campaign sponsored by the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dan, who's our expert in water conservation.
Thank you for doing an excellent job with that presentation and including MMWD. I know Krishna Kumar, our new general manager, asked me to be here, particularly to irritate Chris. And I'm going to disappoint him greatly. North Marin Water District, which I am a customer, I live in Novato, is a phenomenal water district. I remember moving in there, and it was, of all the utilities, it was the one that was the most streamlined and easy to work with. And I say that sincerely, that to follow up and say what Chris has been doing with his team in Novato in terms of developing recycled water, which is a demand management and a supply project, and expanding their conservation programs is phenomenal. And I'm always pleased to work with him and his group. So thank you very much. So in many ways, it's a tale of two water districts here, and I will do my best to try and include it as a we, instead of just MMWD, which I'm most familiar with. And I want to recognize Lisa Cross, who's here in two capacities, one of our great water directors on our board. So thank you very much for being here as well. Dr. Eiler, in one of your studies, I'm not sure if it was the 2014 update or the 2009 study, you said something which I thought was really prophetic in a way, and that is, are you ready for that to be prophetic? You said people need to see conservation as permanent, not temporary. And I couldn't, no one could say it better, I don't think, because really, as Rob mentioned as well, if you look at the business cycles, the economic cycles that we have in our society, that reflected in the stock market, for example, they look like a big wave, right? They're always up and down business cycles, and sometimes they're a little bit more predictable, and sometimes they're not. Well, in many ways, water consumption is its own business cycle, and it tracks the economic business cycle in many ways. So it's almost, and I think Dr. Eiler mentioned it, it's like an economic trend of consumption. So when it's raining and the water reservoirs are full, we feel really good. It's like we've had a good meal. Don't have to think about it. In January, that's all we're thinking about. So this up and down cycle is a historical fact, not only of the water use, but of people's reaction to that, response, and behaviors around water. And if there's anything that I would like to throw out a challenge to all of us today, and that would be to break that cycle for consumption. And there's some really good reasons for it, and there's some great benefits of doing it. So I think we have a historic opportunity right now. The business cycle's in fairly good state, right? At least compared to the doldrums we were in, the historic doldrums a little while ago. Unemployment's down, fantastic news. On the water consumption side, historically, when unemployment goes down, it's a very effective indicator of water consumption going up. I was surprised to learn that. There's a number of studies that do that, that show that. And in fact, water consumption has been going up. People have more money, they feel better, they feel more optimistic, they start using more water. Weather has a very definite impact on it, and season, but also how people feel. So we all use water, and I'm curious, of all the business representatives out here, are there any folks that are very water dependent in their business? They're making soda pop or coffee, something where water is the central commodity. And I wanted to just point out the traditional way of looking at a commodity, right, is an economic good. It's an expense, it's on your expense sheet, and I want to really encourage people to look at water as completely different than that. And I was trying to think of an apt analogy, and the only one I could really come up with would be oxygen or air that we breathe. Imagine if you had to budget for air in your business so your customers could breathe. Is that like inconceivable? But what else besides air, is as essential as water, really, when you think about it? So if you had to budget for air, and air is a wonderfully predictable commodity, right? If you think, I use the word commodity. The plants on Earth just give it to us every day, and it circulates around the globe, and we don't have to think much about it as long as we're breathing. Well, what about water? We don't have the clouds trained quite as well, right? We're working on it. Maybe we'll get to that point, like in science fiction, where we can control the weather and control the rain, but we haven't gotten there yet. And we know from the historic cycles, at least, that there's always going to be droughts in California, right? Every 10 years, every 15 years. We've had, what, 4 or 5 really serious ones in the last 100 years, would you say? Of various degrees, 76, 77. But we don't know what the future is going to hold with climate change. So Krishna Kumar, I mentioned earlier, had a wonderful way of saying this. He said, people have to realize that we will never have enough water in California. We're always in a drought. We will never get out of the woods. And let me just kind of bring that point home. Sounds dramatic, but I don't think it's overly dramatic. In January 2013, as Chris I mentioned, the reservoirs were full and they were spilling in January 2013. Well, what about January 2014? There was a drought emergency statewide. North Marin Municipal Water District were on the verge of declaring, very severe mandatory restrictions. That's only 12 or 13 months. That's not water security. That's not what you want in terms of stability, as mentioned earlier, for your business, and you certainly don't want it for your community. So what can we do every day, knowing that we don't know how much water we're going to have from year to year? Well, this is the good news, right? Because that was all the scary stuff. And it's a win-win situation. Because what you can do as business owners, and what we can all do as citizens here in Marin, is we have a lot of control over how we behave around water and how we use water. Even EO Products, for example, would be, I don't know their whole business model, but I imagine they have a lot of machines that use a lot of water. New technology, tremendous how technology has come along in terms of water efficiency, right? Older technology could use 2, 3, 4 times as much water to accomplish the very same goal. The same for your businesses. I understand Chris in North Marin has a program where they have stealth toilets. So I'm trying to understand what a stealth toilet, I think what it means is you go to bed at night and their team comes in through the window and installs a new toilet. It's hyper efficient, but I'm not sure yet. It's a stealth toilet, 0.8 gallons per flush. Well, it wasn't too many years ago, the gallons per flush were 7.5 gallons. Does anybody have a toilet that's 7.5 gallons? I hope. Whoop, I think I saw an arm up over there. Okay, Alana, you're in trouble. No, I'm teasing. But seriously, there are people who have 7.5 gallon flush toilets still, and they're in the historic category. The new toilets, like the Stealth, are 0.8 gallons per flush. The new clothes washing machines, instead of 40 gallons per wash, 12. Tremendous amount of changes in technology. So if you can think about it, and I would ask you all in your businesses to think about how you use water. Is it your bathrooms? Is it part of your production? Is it cleaning dishes? Whatever it may be, do you know how much water you use? It's just a rhetorical question. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Most people don't. Do you know if you have any leaks in your property? Is it a leased property or do you own it? Have you talked to your landlord? Do they know if they have any leaks? We do thousands of surveys a year in North Marin and Marin Municipal combined, going to people's homes and businesses. And just imagine what the percentage of those properties have leaks that they don't know about. It's about a third. So chances are a third of you in this audience are living and working at places that have leaks and you don't know about it. And the national average for homes, for example, is 15% of the water use is through leaks. And most people have no idea that it's happening. We see it every day going to people's businesses. One comes to mind down in the Sausalito area, where for years, over 5 years, they've had water seeping out under one of their retaining walls. And this is from their landscape. That's the most common area to waste water and not know it, because you can't see it. It just goes in the ground. For over 5 years. And their water bill was thousands and thousands of dollars every 2 months. And we were able to come out and provide a free survey, which North Marin also does. And we found that for all of that period of time, more than 5 years, there was an underground leak 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in that landscape. And it was undermining their retaining wall, and they were getting ready to replace the retaining wall, and someone had the presence of mind to think, well, maybe there's a reason this retaining wall is falling down. And they called us and they asked for help. Turns out we stopped the leak. They had to fix the retaining wall, but their water bill dropped literally more than 50%. That's not an overly dramatized example. That's an everyday event for us, and I don't know how in North Marin if you hear the same thing. Water has been taken for granted, right, for a long time. I still meet people who lived on farms where they had a well and they had to actually pull water up in a bucket. And they have a very different story about water than myself, who grew up in a city and always had water at the tap, right? They know you don't just go to all that work, you walk out to the well, you pull up the bucket, and you carry it back to the house. And if you spill some of it, I mean, you feel, that's not a good thing. I see Annie, do you have a, no? Okay, but you understand what that's like. So it's understandable that most of us who've lived up in a city, and we're so fortunate to have this incredible quality water. We don't have to walk miles, as was mentioned earlier, to get water of the best quality in the world, 24/7, every day of the week. So it's understandable that we would just take it for granted, just like air, right? Just something that we have all the time. With water, again, you have a choice. It's a win-win choice. If you do an inventory, right, define what your water needs are, the demand, right? Because we're always trying to build water capacity to meet the demand. Well, what is the demand? The demand, actually, the real demand, the demand that you actually need for your businesses and your homes and your lives to have a good quality life, is much lower than what we actually use now. Okay, so if we can bring the demand down and stabilize it, instead of being on this roller coaster business cycle, roller coaster consumption cycle, right? Good rain, no rain, rain, no rain, water use up, water use down. If we can stabilize it to what we really need, and we need to get down about 10% in our water use in Marin, right? Much more in other areas, Sacramento, maybe twice that much. But about 10% as a normal, the new normal. And you have tremendous control over that. You can, first of all, figure out how much you need, right? Look at all the processes in your daily use. Look at your water bill. I know I get my water bill from Marin, North Marin. Excellent little graph that shows me what my water use was compared to last year. Very clear and easy. Have all of you done that? Have all of you looked at your water bills? Same for Marin Municipal. Do you know if you have the highest efficiency equipment, right? These are all things you can control fairly inexpensively, and we have programs for that. Chris will give you a stealth toilet. We will come out and install toilets for free at your businesses. For free, turnkey. Couldn't be any easier than that, right? Do you have the aerators that use the least amount of water? So these are all things that will immediately go to your bottom line, right? Improving it. Do you pay your water bill? Your water bill will be less, right? Will you, again, not thinking of it just as a commodity that you buy, will you have more water stability in your water? Yes, because you've now brought down the baseline. And if we all do that, every single customer in Marin Municipal Water District in North Marin in California, the demand goes down. It can go down permanently, partly from technology and partly from behavior. Do you think about it? Do you check for leaks? Are you looking at your water bill? Are you seeing if there's a change in the trends? And that's something that we all have control over. So let's break that cycle, make some big investments in green infrastructure. And that can be plumbing, again, it can be training, it can be your own behavior, and it can be literally green infrastructure in the terms of trees. There's tons and tons of research out there now that shows if you have, let's say, a beautiful landscape outside your business, or just simply a nice street tree outside your business, you're going to get more business, right? If you're in a shopping center, a strip mall, or what have you, and it's nicely landscaped, people are going to come there more often. They're going to stay longer. They're going to spend more money. I mean, these are real economic benefits to you, and if they're also being irrigated properly, right? The trees are being taken care of. The landscape is appropriate. They're going to use as little water as possible. And eventually, if they're planted properly and they're the right species, they won't have to be irrigated much at all. And I know I'm probably running out of time. So there's so much to talk about it. So last time I was up on this stage was graduating from the Sustainable Enterprise Program, the MBA here at Dominican in 2011. And one of the things I learned that I want to just end with is, maybe some of you have heard of Lean Six Sigma, that's in manufacturing and so forth, but basically the idea is eliminate all the waste first in any process, in any business. And that's just common sense, right? So with water, it's the same way. Eliminate waste. So what you do is the DMAIC. Here's the DMAIC, right? Define what you need, define what your demand is, okay? Measure it, okay? Analyze the relationship between what you're using, what your demand is, and what your needs are. Make improvements. Training. Ask us to come out for free and do a survey. invest in green technology, right, that'll go to your bottom line right away. And then control, right? So control meaning maintain those practices. Find your lowest level of water use that you need, stabilize it, just like your business, and control it and make that the new normal. And we're all going to be much better off in the future. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris and Dan, for all that information. That's awesome. What I want to do now is moderate. I'm going to ask a couple follow-up questions, and then we're going to open the floor up. So if you have questions, the way we're going to do it, as soon as I'm done with the 2 quick questions I have, just stand up, say your question as loud as you can. I'll repeat it, and then we'll have an answer. One of the things that I did in the report, and thanks for the non-solicited plug on me from both you guys, the aspect of this being a regional market. So one of the things that I've had a lot of people ask me about, for example, is what's Mendocino County's role in the Sonoma and Marin watershed, if you will, in terms of how does Mendocino County, which is looking at sort of a little bit different water conditions than Sonoma and Marin maybe going into the summer, come in, and then moreover, how does Central California play in terms of the supra-regional water market?
Is a participant in Lake Mendocino, a small amount. The principal sponsor, local sponsor of Lake Mendocino is Sonoma County Water Agency. But there's a huge economic link between Mendocino County and Sonoma County, especially in the vineyards and grape growing. So it's very important from an economic perspective. And politically, it's very important, especially for Marin County, who doesn't vote for anybody in Sonoma County, to have really good relationships with our partners to the north. It's one of the reasons that North Marin has always been so participatory and trying to stay involved with the operation, expansion, biological opinion and implementation of projects in Sonoma County is that we need to rely on our relationship because we don't have any votes. And similarly, I think in Mendocino County, we have to make sure that we're not seen as, say, the Los Angeles versus Owens Valley from a broad comparison. So hopefully we're not seen in that light, but I know that you can always find folks that may want to paint us in that light. But I think that by taking a leadership, forming the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership, trying to bring the Mendocino folks into some of those same programs, so that they benefit as well. I think that will pay off in the long run.
Thanks. Dan?
You know, I have absolutely nothing to add, although it does answer a lot of my questions about why, North Marin is so nice to the folks up north. I understand it's the political motivation.
What about Central California real quick? I mean, is that going to affect this area depending on how deep it gets there in terms of drought?
It will always affect us again on a legislative and political perspective. Back in 2009, there was a comprehensive water bond package that was enacted. The water bond hasn't gone to the voters yet, but we are required to monitor groundwater, although there's little, if any, groundwater in Marin County. There's a lot in Sonoma County and Mendocino County. And we're obligated to reduce per capita water consumption by 20% by the year 2020, and I'm happy to say that we've hit the target. So again, the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership folks got together and formed a regional alliance to meet that 20 by 2020 reduction collectively rather than individually.
I can add a little bit to that on both of the questions. In terms of visibility and awareness of consumption and demand, not only were we incredibly fortunate in Marin to have gotten the rains in February, primarily, just right over Mount Tam.
Yep.
But we also benefit in a strange way from the visibility of a drought, a terrible drought actually in the whole state, because it raises awareness for everyone. It's in the newspapers, it's in the news. And so, you know, in Marin, even though we're not in the dire situations that they are in the Central Valley, we do get a tremendous benefit, if you will, from that overall awareness societally.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. In terms of demand, is the external more important than the internal use in terms of residences and businesses? Because when I did the report, one of the things that came up, at least from Sonoma County Water Agency side, is about 1/3, 2/3 internal, external in terms of residential use. Is that true?
It varies tremendously.
Oh, okay.
For example, in Marin Municipal Water District, it's about 1/3 external and 2/3 internal.
Oh, wow.
Okay, but that's quite different in another, and I'm not sure what it is in North Marin.
It's about a 50%.
About 50-50. And I know, you know, there are many, you know, it's a different mix of housing, it's a different age of housing, and people have different lifestyles. I grew up in San Diego, quite different down there, closer probably to 50-50 or maybe 60-40 outside because it's a hot, dry area. So it really varies. One of the things about external water use for landscape is it's much easier to use far more water than you need. Because if you have an electronic timer, for example, and you don't know how to use it, and you're not monitoring it, and you don't really know what your demand is, you just kind of set it and forget it, which is common, you can easily use 2, 3, 4 times more water outside than you need. Absolutely. If anyone in Marin is watering their landscape, turf included, more than once per week, they're doing a lot of things wrong, and we'll be happy to help you with that. I know that sounds shocking, but it's true. Watering properly outside it's not difficult to learn, but it does require a number of different skill sets and some basic knowledge that most people just do not have.
Folks, we're going to transition panels now, so I want to thank our speakers again for coming this morning.